When you think of the name Miami, you picture Art Deco hotels, endless beaches, and maybe a certain Will Smith song from the 90s. However, what you don't picture is teachers sleeping in their cars outside the schools where they work, or nurses choosing between insulin and rent, or hotel workers spending $400 monthly on gas to reach jobs that pay them $14 an hour. And yet this is Miami in 2025, a city where working full-time guarantees poverty rather than preventing it. Indeed, the mathematics are staggering. International buyers purchase entire condominium floors for cash, while 60% of units sit empty, creating artificial scarcity that drives a two-bedroom apartment to $2,400 monthly. That's more than most workers earn. Sadly, the extraction economy has perfected itself here, transforming every transaction into a wealth transfer from those who work to those who own. Paradise has become a machine for converting human necessity into investor profit. So, in today's video, we'll explain how living in the Magic City became a fantasy for the people who built it, as we explain why living in Miami is becoming impossible. Miami has always been a city of arrivals, but never before has the character of its newcomers so drastically reshaped the lives of those already here. What once was a steady stream of families seeking sunshine has turned into an onslaught of high earners and speculative investors, each one raising the stakes of survival for ordinary residents. Since the year 2020, the cost of a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Miami or Brickell has shot up from $1,600 to over $2,500 each month. That is a 56% jump, and it happened in less than 5 years. In suburban refuges like Kendall and Doral, rents that once provided relief now stretch from $1,800 to $2,000. Families who once balanced budgets with modest comfort now devote half to nearly two-thirds of their income just to avoid eviction. Home ownership, often touted as a way to stability, has morphed into a dream deferred. The median sale price of a home has ballooned from $350,000 in 2020 to $620,000 by mid-2025. That 77% rise renders the modest 18% wage growth over the same span practically meaningless. Behind these numbers lies a new social order. The median household income of new arrivals hovers at $229,300. Long-time residents remain at just $59,390. This gap, nearly threefold, has transformed housing into an arena where locals rarely win. It is not merely a difference of lifestyle, it is the engine that turns Miami into one of the nation's highest housing bubble risks. Vacancy rates in rental housing have fallen below 4%, the lowest seen since 2007. Transit systems groan under the strain. Overpass trains and buses now run at 110 to 120% of capacity during rush hours, packed with commuters forced further from the city core. The average travel time for essential workers has stretched from 28 minutes in 2019 to more than 40 minutes in 2025. Neighborhoods that once reflected cultural diversity are vanishing. Wynwood, Little Havana, and Edgewater brim with art galleries, fine dining, and sleek condos, but they have shed the mom and pop shops and community bonds that defined them. Miami-Dade may still rank as the 7th most populous county in the United States, yet its transformation has turned daily existence into a battle. Teachers, nurses, and hotel staff form the city's backbone, yet many cannot live within the neighborhoods they serve. Some drive for hours, some sleep in their cars, and many leave entirely. The city they sustain is slipping from their grasp, reshaped for the global elite who arrive with cash in hand and little concern for the communities they displace. This is the migration flip, where locals trade places with outsiders in their own hometown. The Magic City remains a beacon for wealth and spectacle, but whether ordinary households can remain is another matter. And to understand how Miami reached this precipice, one must look back to its improbable transformation from swamp to billionaire's playground. Miami did not begin as the gilded escape of Wall Street executives or cryptocurrency magnates. It began as a swamp, a place where the Tequesta people lived for centuries before Spanish claim and eventual American annexation. The city's transformation into what boosters call the Magic City has been fueled by waves of reinvention, each more dramatic than the last. After Julia Tuttle persuaded Henry Flagler to extend his Florida East Coast Railway in 1896, Miami's population ballooned from fewer than 2,000 people in 1900 to nearly 30,000 by 1920. That surge launched the city's first land boom, where raw wilderness was carved into manicured streets and coastal properties marketed as paradise. The hurricane of 1926 and the Great Depression derailed those early dreams, but the city bounced back through military investment in World War II and post-war migration. By the 1950s, Miami became known as a retiree haven, and South Beach's Art Deco hotels rebranded as homes for seniors. Yet that serenity gave way in the 1970s and 80s when cartels turned Miami into a battlefield. The July 1979 Dadeland Mall shootout signaled the rise of the Moline cartel, and within a year, federal agents were seizing 50,000 pounds of the powdery stuff in South Florida. President Reagan and Vice President George H.W. Bush launched a task force to stem the tide, and by the late 1980s, the bloodshed receded. South Beach, however, was left battered, its faded pastel facades crumbling and crime rampant. That might have been the end of Miami's story had preservationists not stepped in to save its Art Deco architecture. By the early 1990s, photographers and fashion shoots transformed those same streets into cultural landmarks. Television, most notably Miami Vice, turned the city into a style capital rather than a crime scene. Then came Art Basel in 2002, an annual December fair that stamped Miami as a global art hub. That event alone generated hundreds of millions in impact and spurred the creation of venues like the Perez Art Museum Miami. The ripple effects, however, were more than cultural. They ignited speculation, pushed property values higher, and drove out working-class families in places like Wynwood and Little Haiti. By the mid-2010s, Florida's lack of state income and estate taxes lured billionaires from New York and California, and South Beach rebranded itself as Billionaire's Beach. The pandemic supercharged this dynamic. Between 2021 and 2022, net IRS filings from New York to Miami more than doubled. Mayor Francis Suarez's crypto branding drew venture capital by the billion, while firms like Oracle and Citadel planted flags in the city. Miami's latest reinvention was complete. A swamp turned drug capital, turned cultural playground, turned billionaires' enclave. But the fuel for this growth has not only been domestic wealth, it has also been foreign cash. And that influx has reshaped Miami in ways more profound than any hurricane or cartel ever managed. If Miami's domestic migration reshaped the city's skyline, foreign capital finished the job. What was once a patchwork of working-class neighborhoods has become a portfolio of assets owned by absentee landlords, shell corporations, and overseas investors who treat Miami less like a city and more like a stock market. In 2024 alone, international buyers poured over $3 billion into residential real estate in Miami. That figure dwarfs other American markets, with foreign purchasers making up 10% of all transactions, 5 times the national average. Latin American wealth dominates this wave. Buyers from Argentina account for more than 1/5 of foreign purchases, followed closely by Venezuela, Colombia, and Brazil. Europeans and Canadians play their part, but the capital flight from politically unstable economies in South America has found a permanent vault in Miami's glass towers. These purchases are not financed in the conventional way. 66% of foreign deals are all cash. In the luxury range above $2,000 per square foot, that share spikes to 83%. The result is a market insulated from lending constraints, where bidding wars are decided by wire transfers, not mortgages. Locals never stood a chance. The side effects are stark. Of Miami-Dade's 2.7 million housing units, nearly 350,000 stand vacant. More than half of those are seasonal or investment properties, meaning entire towers lie dark, except for a few winter months. In 2015, almost two-thirds of condos were owned by absentee landlords, many through shell companies that mask ownership. Among properties priced above $10 million, more than 80% are held by anonymous entities. Federal watchdogs have flagged over 30% of these all-cash deals as suspicious. The concern is not just speculation, but potential money laundering on a grand scale. Tax policy only accelerates the trend. Florida's lack of income and estate taxes allows a millionaire fleeing New York to save nearly $90,000 each year, while a Californian pockets more than $130,000. Nationwide, nearly $40 billion in income flowed into Florida in 2024 alone, with Miami-Dade claiming more than $7 billion. The human cost is displacement. Median household income in Miami sits just below $60,000, while the median home price hovers near $650,000. That ratio, more than 8-to-1, ensures locals are permanently priced out. Rental markets mirror the problem, with one-bedroom units demanding close to $2,000 monthly. Neighborhoods that once pulsed with community, from downtown to Little Haiti, are now dominated by seasonal residents and speculative towers. This is not a market cycle, it is economic colonization. Miami's identity has been exported while global wealth has been imported, creating a city that belongs more to the world's elites than to the people who actually live and work there. The result is a glittering skyline filled with dark windows, and the next chapter reveals just how crushing the arithmetic becomes for the workers still trying to survive beneath it. Numbers alone cannot capture the daily torment of trying to live in Miami on an ordinary wage. This is a city where the rent-to-income ratio has spun beyond reason, trapping service workers in a cycle of multiple jobs, rising debt, and looming eviction notices. Between 2019 and 2023, median rent rose nearly 40%, reaching over $1,700, while household income flatlined around $68,000. By 2025, incomes climbed closer to $87,000, but the reprieve was illusory. Rents still consume nearly 38% of paychecks, far beyond the 30% threshold experts call sustainable. Servers averaging $23 an hour, roughly $48,000 annually with tips, could only truly afford $1,200 in monthly rent, well below the reality of Miami's market. So they doubled up jobs. Almost one-third of renters now work 2 or more positions just to make rent, while nearly half of service industry workers stack extra hours to keep the lights on. Eviction filings echo this stress, rising steadily each year since pandemic moratoriums ended, never returning to pre-crisis levels. Relief programs may have vanished, but rent debt has not. Meanwhile, the human exodus gathers pace. Since 2020, waves of Miamians have fled both the housing market and the hurricane forecasts. About 60% move within Florida, gravitating toward Orlando, Tampa, Fort Myers, and Sarasota. The rest head out of state, chasing affordability in Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, Dallas, and even back to New York, ironically enough. The biggest factor is not sunshine, it is survival. Families are pulling their children from Miami-Dade schools at alarming rates. In just 2 years, enrollment fell by more than 25,000 students, forcing the district to consider closing or consolidating underfilled schools. Teachers are disappearing too. Vacancy rates remain stuck at 2/3 of pre-pandemic staffing levels, with uncertified substitutes filling the gaps. Nurses are scarce, police and firefighters are overstretched, and the service industry bleeds workers who can no longer live where they labor. What remains is a city increasingly built for the wealthy and serviced by commuters who endure crushing costs or abandon the fight entirely. The Schimberg Center projects low-income households in Miami. Fort Lauderdale will shrink further by 2030, while high-income households will keep growing. Those who do leave often find silver linings. One professional who relocated to North Carolina quintupled their salary and gained a larger home, while families in Denver or Atlanta now boast of better schools and quality of life. In short, Miami's loss becomes someone else's gain. The irony is brutal. The Magic City still seduces billionaires and art collectors, but for the people who cook their meals, teach their children, and staff their hospitals, the dream is now a one-way ticket out. And so the spiral continues. Rents climb, wages stagnate, schools empty, workers flee, and Miami teeters on the edge of becoming a luxury brand without a functioning city beneath it. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Are you a native of Miami or have lived there before? And if so, do you agree with this video? We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for joining us for another episode.